Dr. Brian Weiss sat in his office, flipping through patient files. His day had been long, filled with the usual cases of anxiety, depression, and unresolved trauma. As a psychiatrist trained at Yale with years of experience in conventional therapy, he believed that every psychological problem had a logical, scientific explanation. That belief, however, was about to be shattered. Catherine, a 27-year-old woman, sat across from him. She was an ordinary patient, yet her fears were anything but ordinary. Severe anxiety, nightmares, and unexplained phobias haunted her. She had an irrational fear of water, yet had never experienced drowning. The darkness terrified her, yet she had never been locked in a confined space. Medication hadn't worked. Therapy hadn't helped. Dr. Weiss, despite his best efforts, had reached a dead end. Then, as a last resort, he suggested hypnotherapy. Catherine, desperate for relief, agreed. She closed her eyes, took deep breaths, and within moments her body relaxed. Weiss guided her back through childhood memories, searching for any repressed trauma that might explain her fears. "What do you see?" he asked softly. There was a long silence. Then, in a slow, detached voice, Catherine began to speak. "I see water, a vast ocean. The waves are high. I'm on a wooden ship. The sky is dark. There's a storm. People are screaming." Dr. Weiss frowned. This wasn't a childhood memory. "Where are you?" he asked. "I don't know. I think it's long ago. My clothes are different. There's water, it's filling my lungs. I can't breathe." Her voice trembled. Her body stiffened. She gasped, clutching at her throat, as if she were drowning. Dr. Weiss quickly brought her out of the hypnosis. Catherine jolted awake, breathing heavily, confusion in her eyes. "What just happened?" she whispered. Weiss didn't know. Patients under hypnosis could sometimes recall forgotten childhood memories. But this was different. Catherine had described something from another time, another era, a past life. No, that was impossible. Dr. Weiss shook off the thought. He was a man of science. Reincarnation wasn't real, and yet in the sessions that followed, Catherine would continue to defy everything he thought he knew. Act 1. The skeptic psychiatrist. Dr. Brian Weiss had built his career on the foundation of science, logic, and evidence-based therapy. He wasn't just any psychiatrist. He was a Harvard and Yale-trained doctor, a respected professor, and the head of psychiatry at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami. His entire life had been dedicated to helping people through traditional methods, medication, psychotherapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy. He had always believed that the mind's deepest fears and anxieties stemmed from childhood trauma or repressed memories. But Catherine's case didn't fit into any psychological model he had studied. Every session led to something more bizarre. When hypnotized, Catherine didn't just recall childhood memories. She described lives she had never lived. She spoke in different languages, described places she had never been, and talked about historical events she couldn't have possibly known. At first, Weiss tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had read about these things in a book and forgotten. Maybe her subconscious mind was fabricating stories. Maybe she was imagining it all. But then she started revealing details that made no sense, specific names, locations, and events that she had no way of knowing. In one session, she described herself as a young woman in ancient Egypt, detailing customs and rituals with eerie accuracy. In another, she was a soldier in Greece, dying in battle. And in yet another, she was a mother in Spain, watching her child die of disease. Each time her voice changed. Her expressions shifted. Her body tensed with the pain and suffering of lives long gone. Weiss couldn't deny what he was witnessing, but he was afraid to believe it. His reputation was built on science. If he admitted to himself, or worse, to his colleagues, that he was exploring past life regression, his career could be destroyed. And yet he couldn't stop. He began researching reincarnation, studying ancient texts, religious teachings, and scientific experiments on past life memories. He discovered that in many cultures, belief in reincarnation was not only common but deeply rooted in spiritual tradition. Still, his logical mind resisted, until Catherine told him something that changed everything. One day, during a session, she paused and her breathing slowed. Her voice softened. "They are here," she said. Weiss felt a chill. "Who?" he asked. "The masters," she whispered. Her tone had changed. It was calm, almost detached, as if she were no longer Catherine. "They say you must listen. They say you have been brought to this path for a reason." Weiss's heart pounded. He hadn't mentioned anything about his inner conflict, yet she spoke as if she knew his thoughts. He hesitated. then asked, "Why? What reason?" "To heal," she answered, simply. "To understand what lies beyond." Weiss sat frozen, a battle raging within him. Could he truly believe what was happening, or was he risking his entire career chasing something impossible? This was only the beginning. Act 2. Catherine's hypnosis and past life regression. Dr. Brian Weiss had seen many troubled patients in his career. Anxiety, depression, phobias. He had treated them all with a structured scientific approach. But Catherine's case was unlike anything he had ever encountered. She was a young woman with no major traumas in her life. Yet she lived in constant fear. Water terrified her, yet she had never had a drowning incident. She avoided the dark, as if it held something sinister. Sudden sharp pains in her body came and went with no medical explanation. For months Weiss had tried traditional therapy. He explored her childhood, family relationships, and hidden fears. He prescribed medication, relaxation techniques, and cognitive therapy, but nothing worked. Catherine was desperate, so was Weiss. As a last resort, he suggested hypnotherapy. He had used it before, mainly to help patients access repressed childhood memories. He believed that somewhere in her past, there had to be an event, a forgotten trauma, that explained her suffering. Catherine agreed. She lay back, closed her eyes, and followed Weiss's voice. "Relax your body. Breathe in, breathe out. Let yourself drift into a calm, peaceful state." Within minutes, she was under hypnosis. Weiss began guiding her through her memories. "Go back to the earliest moment you remember feeling afraid." Catherine's breathing became shallow. Her lips trembled. I see water," she whispered. "It's cold, dark. The waves are too high." Her hands gripped the sides of the chair. Weiss leaned forward. "Where are you?" he asked. "I don't know," she murmured. "There's a storm. I can't hold on. I'm slipping. I'm drowning." She gasped for air, her body stiffening. Weiss placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are safe," he reassured her. "Move past this moment. What do you see?" There was silence. Then in a calm, detached voice, Catherine said, "The water is gone. I see light. I am floating." Weiss felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't a childhood memory. This was something else. Over the next few sessions, Catherine continued to recall more. But she wasn't talking about events from her current life. She described being a woman in ancient Egypt, wearing long robes, walking through a stone palace. She spoke of Greece, of temples and battles, of men in armor wielding swords. In another session, she was in Spain, grieving over the loss of her child during an outbreak of disease. Each time her voice changed. Her expressions shifted. Her emotions felt real. Weiss tried to rationalize it. Was she making it up? Could her subconscious mind be fabricating these stories? But the details were too specific. She mentioned names, places and customs with accuracy beyond what an ordinary person could know. And then came the most chilling part. She described her deaths. "I feel weak," she whispered in one session. "There's blood, so much blood."